Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Very excited for today's guest. He is the founder of CAARMO, and what they do is they help to build greater employee engagement and loyalty. Very excited to be rocking out here today with Vinay Raman. Vinay, you ready to rock?
I am. Thanks for the time.
Awesome, perfect. First things first, we always start off on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business or your life that we can be inspired by.
Sure. A good story. There's an author named Angela Duckworth, and she talks about she studied all these successful people. And the whole idea is that over 20 years of research, she found that the only thing that matters for success is grit, which is the name of her book. I didn't really know it because I think it's kind of dumb luck, but like this existing business that I'm working on and past businesses that I've worked on in the past, it's not because I was smart enough. I can assure you that. It's just because I just wouldn't give up and I just kept pounding away. I just kept pounding away, and I think I've always just had success with business. I've had my share of failures along the way, but it always ends up turning out well because I just won't give up. And I think there's a fine line between stupid and smart. I think I might float between that line. But just not giving up has always led to really, really good results, even with this business, which I've been working on for 8 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that seems to be the commonality. And I know that, a lot of people who are sitting at home going like, oh, I'm way smarter than that person that's got all that success. Well, then why aren't you out there doing it? The one thing that they have that you don't is the courage to get out there and do it, even though it's not perfect, right?
Yeah, I mean, so someone told me once, get better by 1% every single day, and that's it, right? It just starts to compound over time, and over time, you've gotten so far ahead of everyone else. They can't do 100% effort in one day, but you've been doing it every single day for 100 days. You're so far ahead of them, and I
Yeah,
think that's what I aim to do, and I think that's the success in the
absolutely.
mindset shift, right?
Absolutely. And then, speaking of which, like you say, I mean, along the way, you're going to be hitting a boatload of bad notes and it is what it is. Right. And I mean, that's why I like to talk about the bad note, because I like to make sure that people understand that, you're never going to get it perfect right from the start. So you might as well just get going, don't be afraid to hit those bad notes. And, but on the other hand, I mean, we can learn from other people's past, and maybe we can avoid some of those bad notes. I'm wondering, can you share with us something that just didn't go as planned and how we can possibly recover from it or avoid it?
I wish I was smart enough to tell you how to recover or avoid it. I think sometimes it's just sort of a gauntlet that you've got to run through.
Yeah.
So this current company, I've been running for 8 years now. A little over a year ago, we kind of did a major pivot in what we did as a company. We're going down this path where we're plugging these little devices into vehicles to tell the location of employees to their employers. And Tim, it was a really dark day when I finally realized that a lot of the employers, so we tell them about where the employees are, but we'll also tell them about the health of the vehicle. And we said, hey, look, I'll save you lots of money on the vehicle. Then I'll tell you before it breaks down, I can do all this predictive stuff. And one guy would just, and I purposely said this, one guy was kind enough to say, Vinay, I don't really give a shit about that. and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what do you mean? I've been spending, the last 6.5, 7 years building all this technology. He's like, yeah, I don't care about that. If my employees don't show up, that's what I really care about. That was a really dark day when I realized I spent 6.5 or 7 years working on a project. But now I look on that a year ago and say, if I hadn't had that supreme failure there, which again, I want to say that probably took me about 2 or 3 months to come out of that funk, if that's what you want to call it, I wouldn't have gotten here today unless I'd had that massive failure. I'd raised money for this company for that project. And when I had to go to all my investors and tell them, guys, I'm going in a different direction, they're all kind of like, wait, what? You're going in a different direction. I was like, yeah, that's not what people want. No. That was a tough day, but gosh, on the other side of it, it's been a fantastic journey because I had to go through it. Does that make some sense?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's one of those things where we do need to get feedback from the market and figure out if they want what it is that we're trying to create. But then again, I'm wondering, like, how did you know that it was not worth continuing on that same path. Like that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I felt like I was spending more time. So I talk about this internally and kind of on LinkedIn and places where I post things. I always talk about this idea of invitational leadership. I like to invite people to a better place. And if they want to come along, they can opt in. But I felt like the whole time I was selling that product, that previous product, I was having to convince people to do it. And they were kind of saying, I don't know. I was like, no, this is really, really good for you. You ought to do it. And it felt so salesy to me. It didn't feel natural because I like having great conversations with people. And when I was forcing people, it just didn't fit. So I don't know if I can put a number on it. It's kind of a gut feel thing. It just wasn't right. Now that I made this transition, it's people like, Vinay, this is fabulous. I want to join you on that ride. I want to go there where you're taking me. I don't have to ask. They start asking me. It's like the tables have turned. So I don't know if that's a concrete enough answer. It feels a little too abstract, but it's almost like a gut feel shift in the way things have happened.
Oh, I think it's a very good answer because I mean, that's the point. I mean, we're here to try to solve problems in business. And so if you have to convince someone that they have a problem that you're trying to solve, then maybe they don't actually have that problem.
Or it's
Right?
not big enough that they care about, right? Or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the thing about especially working for yourself, about being a, work at home rock star, is that you want to be passionate, you want to be excited about your business. And if you're going into your business every day trying to convince someone that they need your product, then that's probably not going to be fun. And you're probably going to get that same gut feeling that you got, where like, maybe this isn't what I need to be doing. Right.
Yeah, another component of that was also just this whole. I've made a real shift myself in terms of from working from home. I had a lot of time to think about a lot of things and talk with people because I can do Zoom meetings instead of spending time commuting, which I've actually been able to leverage to my benefit. So I get to ask a lot of people. I was like, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think?" Is just more mentors, more advisors, more people that I can learn from, and I've started to shift so much from a place of I got to or I have to I want to and I will. And I will go in this direction. I'll feel really happy about it. And the way the company was before the pivot, I felt like I was just kind of force fitting. I'm a square and it's a round hole kind of thing, right? I was force fitting myself to it to try to get somebody to buy my product for something that was an itch that they didn't really care that much if it was scratched. No, I've kind of found my own tribe and my own following of people because I'm going where I want, and people are like, hey, I want some of that, and they just start to come along for the ride.
Mhm.
Gosh, so much more easy. I go to sleep better at night. I don't know if that resonates, but
Totally.
I don't know how to articulate that feeling. It's just so much more comfortable every single day.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, about gathering the fans. Like, so now let's just say that you have found something that a problem that you can solve, that, you can use your own unique skills that you can solve a problem. Now, I mean, even though you have this idea and you're solving this problem, you still need to find people to solve it for. And so how do you go about, building that following?
Yeah, it's a thing that we've talked about internally a lot. As I've started to build some of my team, and they all work remotely all over the world, and building clarity for them as to how we take people through that process. So we've got 5 core values that we have as a company, and the first one is connection. Right? I think of it as you're walking down the street. I can't, I see a beautiful man, beautiful woman, whatever the case may be. I see them and I want to strike up a conversation with them. I can't say, "Hey, how are you? You want to get married?" It's a little too fast, right? So it's about kind of giving the grace and the space to build a relationship there, right? So I start with a question, hey, and find some component of similarity. They just walked out of the Chamber of Commerce. Hey, have you been to the Chamber of Commerce before? And they say, yeah, I get lots of value out of it. Really? Why? Right? And I lean into that question a lot. I ask them why and what they do. And as I start to learn about them, right, it starts telling me so much about them. And if I strike, there's a shared reality between the two of us, then I start to be able to have a conversation. Is this kind of answering your question there?
Yeah, I do the same thing. I think questions are absolutely key. Now, what about like, do people, do you think that you're bothering people sometimes when you're doing that?
I used to wonder about that. Um, I just ask. If so that first core value for the company is connection. Number two is wonder, right? And wonder is kind of coming in with complete awe and just no judgment. I truly ask people from a place of curiosity as opposed to trying to sell them, right? If I'm trying to take them somewhere, then it kind of comes through in the language that I use. Hey, I've got this piece of ice, Eskimo, that I want to sell you, right? As opposed to if I just ask them truly where they are, then and I start building the foundation for the relationship, I don't feel like I'm selling them because they're engaging, they're asking questions, they're responding. I say, hey, am I boring you with this stuff? And if they say no, hey, they've given me the permission to keep going.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that are looking for connection as well. I mean, you can also use your intuition. I mean, if a person's trying to get out of the conversation, then you know that you're probably bothering them. But like you say, I mean, oftentimes, I mean, if you're walking out of just flip it around the other direction. So if you're walking out of the Chamber of Commerce and someone asks you some questions about, your life, your business, what you're getting out of it, are you going to be upset about that? Like, I mean, you might be in a hurry and you might say, hey, listen, I'm in a hurry right now, and you might take off. But if you're not, then you probably wouldn't be that upset, would you?
I agree. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and one of the things I teach my kids is that every single person is the world's foremost expert on one topic, and that is themselves, right? So if you just ask them questions about themselves, not because you're trying to sell them something, but because you're actually curious about them, they'll tell you a lot about themselves and what they need and what they want and where they're going. And then if you can show them how they can get there, all of a sudden they start saying, yeah, why don't you tell me more? I am intrigued, because it's actually scratching an itch that they have. Um, so yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, just asking them questions about them. True. I try not to use the word authentically because everyone uses that so often.
Yeah.
But I think that's really what it is. Just true wonder
Yep.
about them.
And you know what? It's possible they might be able to help you as well. Right.
Yeah.
So there could be a win-win in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have found people who've become mentors to me just because I just started asking them about a topic, and then this lady named Susan, who is did a marketing class that I attended once, and I went up to afterwards just to ask her some clarifications. That was 2 years ago. She's a mentor of mine now, and I meet with her once a month. And gosh, I got to tell you, it has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, is just going and asking her some questions. Because now whenever I have questions about marketing, I just call it Susan and
Nice.
ask. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, okay, let's talk about your band a little bit then. So, I mean, I have a lot of analogies with music here, and in order to really put on a good show, you're going to need some people around you. And I'm wondering, how is it that you either go about finding the people around you? What people do you have around you? What people do you think are important to build a successful business?
Yeah. So I think there's different types of people, and all of them need a different set of lenses, if you will. Let's talk about maybe the people internal to your company, the people you're going to work with. I always think about, I'm not really so worried about the skills, because I feel like I have the capacity, or I'll find somebody who has the capacity to teach them what to do. I'm more interested in finding somebody who's got the desire, the interest, and that, kind of aligns with those core values, connection and wonder. If they're curious, I always say, if I can get somebody to be thinking about my problem when I'm not talking to them, I win, right? So if I am going to bring somebody into the company and they come back and they say, within the first week of hiring, they say, I was looking at this article the other day. I was like, well, hold on. Did I ask you to go look at that article? And they say, no. It's like, well, why did you do that? Because I feel like there's something here that we can do. That's fantastic, right? That's another 2 hours of time I didn't have. Yeah. So I'm always trying to look for people who are curious about solving the problem because they feel empowered to do that. And that's my job, to give them the space to do that. So I look for people, I'll teach them the skills, we'll get them the skills. So that's internal. Externally, I'm looking for people who, I'm always trying to investigate myself, kind of level up and go to the next level. I think of kind of like, these role-playing games or video games, you're always having to go to the next level by earning experience points or whatever else. I try to find people who are trying to level up, because if they're leveling up, they're starting to ask a lot of questions. At some point, they'll start asking questions that I might be able to guide them to. I can't give them the answer. I can kind of guide them to. They make fantastic customers.
Yeah.
So does that make some sense?
Yeah, I actually do agree with you. Looking for people that are ready to level up. Like even if you're doing any subcontracting and you're, I find it useful to ask if the person is taking any courses or has a mentor or a coach. I mean, if they do, then that they're actually interested in growing. But then in that scenario, like, what do you say about maybe some people might be holding back on teaching, the tricks of the trade to everybody that they bring on board because they think maybe they might be leaving and going somewhere else. Like, how would you handle that?
So when I was 17, I remember this is a great story. At least I like it. When I was 17, my dad and I had gone to one of his friends' house to go play pool in his basement. He had this beautiful pool room and everything. And he was this doctor, quite wealthy, did a lot of time investing and inventing stuff on his spare time. And I told him about this idea I had. He stopped, put this pool stick down, and looks at me. He said, Vinay, there's 100,000 people in the world who've had the same exact thought as you. Only 2 people out of those 100,000 do anything about it. His point is, if you come from a place, or at least this is where I've shifted my thinking, is if you come from a place that there's nothing that I know that is so revolutionary and groundbreaking that nobody else has thought of it, then you start to realize that my value is not in the idea, the value is in the execution, right? So then if I can teach somebody, they're constantly trying to figure out how to execute it as opposed to think about the idea, right? I've just leveled myself up because now I have taught someone how to do something and they start doing it and I start thinking further forward. So in my company, I'm constantly trying to, I tell people who every time I hire somebody, I said, my job is to kind of put my feet up on the desk and wrap my fingers behind my head and just lean back because you all are doing the work. That is me being successful because you all figure out how to do it. I just tell you why we're doing it. No. And it's worked really well for me.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, when you're sharing your idea with people around you, I mean, you're looking really, I think, to find out if the idea that you have is solving a problem. And that's like the market research part of it, right? And if you're worried that they're going to take that idea and run with it, well, I mean, what are the chances? Like you say, 2 out of how many? Yeah. And that really is true. I mean, if someone does actually have the motivation to take that idea and run with it before you do, well, then it just actually means that you don't have as much motivation as they do, which means you need to kind of take a step and look inside and go, do I have enough motivation to run with this idea? Right?
Yeah. I mean, you think about the greatest thinkers of our time, sort of recent time. I mean, if you think about people, leading with your why, I mean, like Simon Sinek or Gary Vee or, Adam Grant, a lot of these folks have published works. Those things, if you go back and look at ancient texts, I mean, leading with why, Buddha talked about leading with why in 453 BC, a long time ago, right? So Simon Sinek has talked to you about an implementation of how to do something today, but it's that the foundational truth is the same. So if I kind of start saying to myself, if I start to think I'm the only person who knows this, I kind of get over myself and say, all right, there's somebody else who's done this as well. But how do I actually get the idea out there so that people know me for the idea, right? That's more important.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to think that there's like this infinite intelligence out there and we're just picking the idea out of it. And meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of other people picking that same idea out of that cloud at the same time. And so, really just, if you've got something and it's resonating with you and you're really feeling like this is a good idea, go for it, right? I mean, because if you don't, maybe the other 2 people are.
Yeah, I mean, how many types of companies sell books and how are their models different? I mean, Amazon has kind of taken that industry over. But you look at computers. I mean, Apple's a computer company, really, at the end of the day. But they're so different from Dell and HP and Microsoft and Google and Asus. They all do things differently, even though it's the same exact idea. None of them try to say, I have the whole market. They just do it completely differently with the same exact fundamental idea.
Yeah.
So the execution is what matters, not the idea.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you have a mentor, Susan, I think was her name, right? And, I'm wondering about, just the whole concept of hiring coaches and bringing in mentors and all that stuff. Like, do you think that's important, in building a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I was telling you a little earlier, I learned a stat once that kind of validated a lot of what I've started to believe. That is that the average Olympic athlete has 9 coaches. Now, if they're going to operate at that level, how is it that I believe I'm going to be world class unless I have at least 9 coaches? That's kind of the way, and that's the average.
Yeah.
Right. So the answer to your question is actually, I'll tell you, a lot of coaches and mentors, I don't even ask or aren't even paid. I just ask them because it's so flattering to them. They tell me that they learn more from me asking them questions than them actually giving me answers. But again, with my kids, I'm constantly trying to get them to raise their perspective. And I tell them that you could be the smartest, assume for a moment, I'm the smartest man in the world. And I am staying at the bottom of a valley. The man or woman who's standing on the highest hill knows when it's raining before I do, right? It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with perspective, right? So if you think you can outsmart the situation, you're not going to have the right perspective, no matter how smart you are. So getting coaches and mentors is all about getting the right perspective. When I have something that bothers me, what I do now is I pick up the phone and I call, there's 6, 7 people that I'll call for different topics, right? I'll call 6 or 7 people. I'll call my investors. I'll call, Susan, or I'll call, my CTO. I'll call different people and ask them, what do you think about this? And by the end of the day, my perspective would have completely changed. The maturity of thought, how comfortable with the idea, how sort of feels kind of my gut is completely transformed. And that happens like that now, as opposed to taking 6 months, which is what I love.
Yeah. Yeah. It compresses time. So now I wonder, like, I have a feeling that people don't want to hire anybody or ask for help because somehow we've been taught that that's like a weakness or something. I'm wondering, like, maybe is that like a big difference between people who have gotten success and people who haven't?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe so. I mean, I feel like this is my ability to level up faster and my ability to go faster, increase my velocity of unlearning. Everyone's a learner, but the ability to unlearn fast is how you can put more stuff in. You're cleaning stuff off the shelf, right? It's that closet, hallway, or the garage. Every 6 months, you gotta clean it up, right? So I got to do that for my head, and the only way I can do that is by getting more people who put good stuff in. So absolutely, it's powerful. It continues to get you to keep shifting your perspective to the next level, because what it takes for me go from 1 to 5 is different than what it takes from 6 to 10, 10 to 20, so on and so forth. Each different stage requires a different level of perspective, because what got me to here is not going to get me through tomorrow. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's just a matter of just look at your life. I mean, if you are exactly where you want to be, then great, keep doing what you're doing. However, if you're not, and then you're looking over at somebody else, and you mentioned, athletes, I mean, they got boatloads of coaches. Is it because they don't know how to, I mean, some of the best athletes in the world, they know how to do their sport, right? They know what they're doing. However, they still have a coach. So why, if they already know the answer to the questions, do they have a coach? And then when we look at ourselves, you say, well, I don't have a coach because I already know what I'm doing.
So I've got a story here that I think will resonate. I'm one of those people that's so incredibly curious. So I'll talk to anybody. And the person who was sitting next to me on an airplane ride back from Utah, my last business trip, started talking to her, and she's a counselor for anxiety and stress. I started saying, for who? And who do you do this for? And she does it for a lot of graduate students. I said, graduate students have a lot of stress. She said, you wouldn't believe how many of them are under tremendous pressure. I said, why is that? She said, because a lot of them come to school and have really high expectations of themselves to achieve and to get their master's or PhD or whatever the case may be, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. I said, so then how do you relieve that stress? Well, the first question I go to and ask them is said, so why did you come to school? And they say, well, because I want to get better at this. And did you come to school thinking that you knew it all? And she said, usually they start laughing because they realize sort of how silly that is, that they're putting so much pressure on themselves to be the best, but they came to school to learn how to get to be the best, right? You're not just there. It is a process and a journey to get there. And it constantly requires you to relearn. And that stress that you put on yourself for being the best is kind of just an internal uncomfortability with where you are. You got to get there. So does everybody. And that's why, I mean, I don't even know if it's 9. I like to think it's probably on the order of a dozen and a half people that I call when I get into a rut. So.
Okay. So let's just say that, maybe somebody on this, who's listening to this podcast right now has kind of gone, okay, yeah, I get it. I know I need to go find a mentor or somebody to help me with this. Like, what's the first step? How would they go about doing that?
I learned this from a Steve Jobs clip, which I don't know that I'm the biggest fan of Steve Jobs, but it was a fantastic video clip. And he said, you'll be surprised by how many people will be willing to help if you just ask them for help. Right. And I was a much younger guy when I first heard this. And I used to think, I was very much interested in college, getting girls to talk to me. I couldn't, I trip over my tongue every single time. Mm-hmm. And what I learned from that was simply that if I'd gone to the gym every time and there was a girl that I was interested in, all I had to do is go ask the girl, how do you use that equipment? Because once the first sentence starts, right, it's easy to carry the conversation. It's the first sentence, which is the hard one, right? So if there's a business leader or someone else that does something that they're impressive to you, you go to them and say, and this might be the hard pill to swallow, go to them and say, I feel like there's so much I could learn from you. I have known, I've seen you, I've seen what you've done. Would you be willing to spend just, 30 minutes with me once a month to just walk me through how you think about what I'm going through? I would love your help. You'd be surprised how many people would just be like, you want me to help you? Yeah, I respect so much of what you do. You'd be surprised how many, I am still surprised how many people say, yeah, sure. Once a month. I said, I promise I won't be a pest. And they never say, oh, that's a problem. They usually say, all right, let's just book some time. And it continues to amaze me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that the thing about that is that, people like to have purpose. People like to help other people generally, I think. I mean, unless they're way too busy, and then that's totally different. But generally people want to help. And so when you come and ask them a question, I think that the idea in our head is that, oh, this person's going to think I'm stupid, or this person's going to think that however, they are looking at it from their own perspective, and their own perspective is, this is my opportunity to help and to have some purpose. So why wouldn't they jump to that? Right.
Yeah, as I mentioned Susan, so I'll just kind of use her. I mean, I've told her, every time I get off a call with her, it's usually an hour long. I say, Susan, gosh, thank you so much for your time again. She's like, Vinay, you don't need to say that to me. You don't realize, and something that I realized, that I think I'm a reasonably smart guy. There's not a lot of stuff that I haven't heard before. It's just that I haven't revisited that topic in a really long time. And that's kind of what she says to me, is every time you ask me these questions, it causes me to revisit some of the things that I haven't done in a while and say, maybe it's an opportunity for me to do it. She said, so every time I talk to you, Vinay, I feel like I get a chance to re-examine myself as I'm talking through the answers. She said, I think I might actually get more out of these sessions than you do, Vinay. I was like, well, then I'm happy because this is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my mentors and advisors feel exactly the same way. They get, if you've ever taught anybody, you actually learn more in teaching than you do in learning.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think there's a huge benefit in sort of having somebody consistently that you are learning from, somebody who's a peer, and also somebody that you're teaching. And if you have those three things covered at all times, then you're constantly up leveling because you're learning from all those different types of angles, right?
Yeah, I was a mentor for a bunch of kids. I continue to be a mentor for a bunch of kids in a business plan competition at the local high school. it amazes me how unbounded their thoughts are in when they think about ideas. And I hear this, and the first thing out of my mouth is like, first thought in my head was, do they even realize how ridiculous that is? And I started shifting to, wait, hold on a second. Why do I keep putting limitations on that? Why can't I think that big? I get more out of those sessions than I think those high school kids do.
Great. So now let's talk about your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have talked about this idea of being able to help others. For me, I believe that everybody is a genius in their own right. It's just a matter, or I'll just talk about myself. I believe that everybody is a genius in their own right. It's whether I'm smart enough to see it or not, right? So what we do as a company is allow companies to see the genius and the value that lies in each individual. Gosh, I mean, everybody shows up to work. I show up to work because it's part of my purpose. I enjoy what I do. It's taking me to a place, whether it's my family, my kids, my spending habits, whatever lifestyle I want. Gosh, if you could help the leaders of every organization understand the value and the motivators for each individual, that's a world that I want to be part of. And that's what we do. That's what we've built as a company, is the ability for each manager in a company to figure out what their people really need in order to get to level up, get to the next level and unlock their truest potential. Does that make some sense?
It sure does. Yeah. And I mean, I think that the world needs that right now. I think we've got a lot of people that are feeling like numbers in their companies. And, you know, I think that, I mean, we're probably already seeing some of that, you know, fallout happening now. And, you know, for the companies that really want to continue to be relevant in the future, I think we are going to need to flip that around a little bit and show purpose to people. Otherwise, you know, everybody's going to work from home and start their own business. However, you know, that's the thing, is that businesses do need people. And so, you know, having a service like that where you're going to help to teach, because I don't think that that is something that's taught in schools, is it? You know, in business school.
I don't think so.
So how do we find out more about your program?
Sure. I mean, they're more than welcome to reach me. Go to our website, www.caarmo, spelled CAARMO.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn. It's Vinay Raman, VINAY. Last name is Raman, RAMAN. I'm the CEO and founder of CAARMO, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to. We're constantly dropping posts out there, doing polls, trying to drop some value in terms of how to build greater engagement and understand and empathize with your employees so you can unlock financial success for the company. So I think those are two great ways to reach out if they want. And my email address is Vinay, VINAY, letter R, @caarmo.com. So they can reach out to me if they have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. And to the people listening, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.